today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Today is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है, नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है। नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए जोश से निकल पड़े हम, आने वाला कल होगा हमारा। नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के इस सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस। रिलायंस, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
Welcome to the world of Tata Steel, a flagship company of the global business conglomerate, the Tata Group. Tata Steel is one of the world's most geographically diversified steel producers, with operations and commercial presence across the world. The story began with the dream of one man, Jamsetji Nusserwanji Tata, a pioneer, a visionary, a man ahead of his times. He had his heart set on building a steel plant in India that would compare with the best globally. His dream was brought to fruition by his son, Dorabji Tata, and thus was born Tata Iron and Steel in Jamshedpur in 1907. At the turn of the 21st century, fueled by its global aspirations, Tata Steel expanded its footprint to Southeast Asia in Singapore and Thailand. Acquisition of Chorus in Europe in 2007 placed it amongst the top global steel companies in the world. In 2015, Tata Steel set up a state-of-the-art integrated steel plant at Kalinganagar, Odisha in India. The Phase 2 expansion of Kalinganagar steel plant from 3 million TPA to 8 million TPA is currently underway. The company is all set to pursue domestic growth with its acquisition of Bhushan Steel Limited and the steel business of Usha Martin. This forms part of the overall strategy to increase its India footprint, build capacity in long products, and enrich the product portfolio. Besides steel manufacturing facilities, the company has mining assets in the state of Jharkhand and Odisha in India. Tata Steel, has evolved into a leading steel manufacturer, catering to diverse market segments. In its trend-setting journey, spanning more than a century, Tata Steel has contributed immensely towards the well-being of the planet and people. Guided by its vision to be the global steel industry benchmark for value creation and corporate citizenship, Tata Steel is poised to lead the future.
सुरक्षा हर पिच पर, ताकत लंबी पारी खेलने की, परफेक्ट फिट, क्वालिटी टेस्ट। मैच से पहले ये सारे चेक्स बहुत जरूरी होते हैं, ठीक वैसे जैसे घर की छत चूज करते समय। तो बस ले आइए GSW कलर ऑन प्लस की छत, जो दे आपके घर को मजबूती और सुरक्षा। GSW कलर ऑन प्लस, सुंदर छत सालों साल।
GSW न्यू स्टील TMT सरिया बेस्ट है।
सरिया दिखता कहाँ है?
ये देखिए बेस्ट क्वालिटी।
चेस्ट गार्ड है, दिखता कहाँ है?
दिखता नहीं तो कुछ भी लगाओगे क्या? ये देना। GSW न्यू स्टील TMT बार, प्योर स्टील, मजबूत घर।
ये दीवारें जानती हैं हर शुरुआत का पता। एक नई सोच के साथ अपने सपने की सुबह।
जब उम्मीद मिलाए हिम्मत से हाथ, हर सपने को मिले मजबूती का साथ।
आओ बनाए हर सपने को मजबूत JSW सीमेंट के साथ। JSW सीमेंट, द लीडर्स चॉइस।
कभी हिंदुस्तान के रंगों के बारे में सोचा है? लाल, पीला, हरा, नीला। तो चलो मिलकर इस रंगीन चादर को फिर से सिलते हैं। जो तेरा वो मेरा, और जो मेरा वो सबका। इसीलिए पहली बार JSW पेंट्स लाए हैं 1808 शेड्स एक ही प्राइस पर। JSW पेंट्स, थिंक ब्यूटीफुल।
In 1868, the Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are a $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has been built on enduring values. Today is about delivering excellence across business sectors. building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Our today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Our today is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है, नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है। नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए जोश से निकल पड़े हम, आने वाला कल होगा हमारा। नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के इस सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस। रिलायंस, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
Welcome to the world of Tata Steel, a flagship company of the global business conglomerate, the Tata Group. Tata Steel is one of the world's most geographically diversified steel producers, with operations and commercial presence across the world. The story began with the dream of one man, Jamsetji Nusserwanji Tata, a pioneer, a visionary, a man ahead of his times. He had his heart set on building a steel plant in India that would compare with the best globally. His dream was brought to fruition by his son, Dorabji Tata, and thus was born Tata Iron and Steel in Jamshedpur in 1907. At the turn of the 21st century, fueled by its global aspirations, Tata Steel expanded its footprint to Southeast Asia in Singapore and Thailand. Acquisition of Chorus in Europe in 2007 placed it amongst the top global steel companies in the world. In 2015, Tata Steel set up a state-of-the-art integrated steel plant at Kalinganagar, Odisha in India. The Phase 2 expansion of Kalinganagar steel plant from 3 million TPA to 8 million TPA is currently underway. The company is all set to pursue domestic growth with its acquisition of Bhushan Steel Limited and the steel business of Usha Martin. This forms part of the overall strategy to increase its India footprint, build capacity in long products, and enrich the product portfolio. Besides steel manufacturing facilities, the company has mining assets in the state of Jharkhand and Odisha in India. Tata Steel has evolved into a leading steel manufacturer, catering to diverse market segments. In its trend-setting journey, spanning more than a century, Tata Steel has contributed immensely towards the well-being of the planet and people. Guided by its vision to be the global steel industry benchmark for value creation and corporate citizenship, Tata Steel is poised to lead the future.
सुरक्षा हर पिच पर, ताकत लंबी पारी खेलने की, परफेक्ट फिट, क्वालिटी टेस्ट। मैच से पहले ये सारे चेक्स बहुत जरूरी होते हैं, ठीक वैसे जैसे घर की छत चूज करते समय। तो बस ले आइए GSW कलर ऑन प्लस की छत, जो दे आपके घर को मजबूती और सुरक्षा। GSW कलर ऑन प्लस, सुंदर छत सालों साल।
GSW न्यू स्टील TMT सरिया बेस्ट है।
सरिया दिखता कहाँ है?
ये देखिए बेस्ट क्वालिटी।
चेस्ट गार्ड है, दिखता कहाँ है?
दिखता नहीं तो कुछ भी लगाओगे क्या? ये देना। JSW न्यू स्टील TMT बार, प्योर स्टील, मजबूत घर।
ये दीवारें जानती हैं हर शुरुआत का पता। एक नई सोच के साथ अपने सपने की सुबह।
जब उम्मीद मिलाए हिम्मत से हाथ, हर सपने को मिले मजबूती का साथ।
आओ बनाए हर सपने को मजबूत JSW सीमेंट के साथ। JSW सीमेंट, द लीडर्स चॉइस।
कभी हिंदुस्तान के रंगों के बारे में सोचा है? लाल, पीला, हरा, नीला। तो चलो मिलकर इस रंगीन चादर को फिर से सिलते हैं। जो तेरा वो मेरा और जो मेरा वो सबका। इसीलिए पहली बार JSW पेंट्स लाए हैं 1808 शेड्स एक ही प्राइस पर। JSW पेंट्स, थिंक ब्यूटीफुल।
In 1868, the Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are a $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has been built on enduring values. In 1868, the Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are a $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has been built on enduring values. Our today is about delivering excellence across business sectors. Our today is about building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Our today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Our today is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है, नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है। नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए नए जोश से निकल पड़े हम, आने वाला कल होगा हमारा, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के इस सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस। रिलायंस, नए इंडिया का नया
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Menke?
Yes.
I think we are gone live. I think you can
Okay.
start.
So shall I start? Yes.
Yeah, can. Thank you.
Thank you. Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Singapore country session of the CII Partnership Summit. My name is Ho Ming Kit. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Singapore Business Federation, a key partner, a business partner, a business organization partner of the CII in Singapore. I'm very glad to be moderating this panel discussion today on Singapore in India, collaboration, transformation, and growth. So I will introduce to you the panelists in a while. But before I do that, I wanted to show this book that I picked up, and this is the book called India on My Mind, and it was just launched recently by our Prime Minister on the 7th of October 2020, and some of our panelists here have provided essays in this particular book. So during this book launch, our Prime Minister mentioned that Singapore is an early believer in India's immense potential. And this book is a timely reminder to Singapore that India will always be a valued friend and a partner. So I think this is I had some chance to glance through this book, and looking at it and looking at what has happened, say, since even during this year, during the pandemic, in April 2020 to September 2020, Singapore was still the top source of foreign direct investment in India, with over $8.3 billion of inflow into India. So investments into India still carried on despite COVID-19. And then in November this year, DBS Bank India Limited, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of DBS Bank, acquired Lakshmi Villa Bank in India. And DBS has been in India since 1994 and has converted its India operation into a wholly owned subsidiary in March 2019. So DBS has increased its exposure, participating in the financial sector in India. We have also smaller companies like homegrown companies like Tong Garden and smart lock manufacturer Igloo Home that has established their foothold in India via e-commerce opportunities. So Tong Gardens has seen their sales increase since the e-commerce channel operations during the Indian lockdown. And they have also planned to set up manufacturing facilities in India to serve the Indian market better. So I'm giving you two examples of how, despite COVID-19, companies big and small continue to make important investments in India. So I wanted to move on to the collaboration between SBF and CII. As I mentioned before, CII and SBF are active sort of engagement with each other. And we have been receiving the CII core group who visits us annually since 2011. And we use the core group as a high-level platform for our senior business leaders, as well as our political leaders, to discuss issues, partnerships, and collaboration to deepen our mutual bilateral business and economic relations. So in 2018, to mark the 25th anniversary of CII's relationship with Singapore, we formed the Singapore-India Business Council. And I think this is an important platform to signify the strategic and broader collaboration between SPF and CII. And in January of this year, we also successfully organized the Singapore CEO high-level delegation visit to Delhi and Mumbai with the support of CII. So thank you very much for that. So I wanted to let you know that our relationship potential grows very deep. Our partnership in particular with CII is very deep and substantial. But what has changed since COVID-19? I think COVID-19, what has changed immediately is that we were not able to visit your country. So many of our activities that we are doing with India have gone online. I mentioned even businesses have gone online to the e-commerce channel. So certainly for us, it was actually easier for us to be able to do our webinars and to be able to get CII participants and speakers quite easily now. And so similarly, our companies are beginning to use e-commerce. So the transformation enabled, the opportunities enabled by digitalization and e-commerce is forced upon us by COVID-19. And I think to me, that is a significant shift in post COVID-19, that we all have to go more digital, look at more digital transformation, and look at more opportunities in the digital space, of which the e-commerce market in India is obviously one big opportunity. The second opportunity, I think, is that we are now talking more about resilient supply chain. So I think when we are talking about resilient supply chain, the premium that we place on diversification and the premium that we placed on good, reliable, and efficient infrastructure remains very, very important. So resilient supply chains also means shifting of supply chain from one economy to another. And with the US-China issue, huge manufacturing operations are continuing to be shifting out of China. How do countries in Southeast Asia, including India, position themselves to receive some of this supply chain into their respective country? So I think there are another big opportunity as a result of shifting supply chain. Supply chain is also critical for the food sector, for economies in Singapore that is really heavily reliant on importation for its food supply. So food resilience and food security becomes more important. And India has not been a main source of food importation for the Singapore market. And certainly, I think collaboration in the area of food is also important. We must not also forget about health, because we are still in the midst of battling this pandemic. So health cooperation, particularly noting that in India, you have 60% of the world's manufacturing facilities for vaccine, and that is now emerging as something that's being rolled out in some countries, and some vaccines are now reaching the stage of getting regulatory approvals in national economies. So certainly there will be, I think, space and room to look at health collaboration as a result of better cooperation to really fight this COVID pandemic. So I've sketched out the sort of changes that will sort of define our bilateral business relationship going forward. And I would like to introduce my panel now. First off, I will leave a lot of room for each one of them to introduce themselves more. But it is first off is Mr. Manohar Katani, who is the Senior Executive Director of Capital Land Group. I've known Manohar for many years. So Manu, welcome. Thank you for being part of the panel. And next is Dr. Francis Chong, who is the Senior Director of the Emerging Market Division and the Singapore India Partnership Office, a very important public office looking at enhancing and developing our relationship with India. So thank you, Francis, for joining. Mr. Vijay Ivinga, who is the founder and chairman of AgroCorp International, a major player in food in India. Something that we can talk about a lot more about the issue of food cooperation and food security, and even maybe agri-tech cooperation. So thank you, Vijay. And finally, Mr. Lawrence Peck, who joined a few months ago, a very important chamber in Singapore, the Singapore Manufacturing Chamber Federation. He is the Secretary General, and I think later he's going to talk about the future of manufacturing and the possible collaboration that we and India can do, looking at the future of manufacturing and things like Industry 4.0 and the new 3D printing. So something to look forward to, Lawrence, when you share it with us. So in terms of the format, what we have today is basically I'll ask each of the four panelists to make some introductory remarks. Then we will have some Q&A amongst ourselves, and then we'll pick up some of the questions and answer from the audience, and we will probably look at them and put some of them during our panel discussion, or maybe we'll group them at the end. But I will leave that open-ended at the time. So if you are putting your questions to the panelists, please put them in the chat box to address for specific panelists. Please be very short in terms of the comments or your questions that you want. So we want to be absolutely focused. I think we have about 1 hour, 30 minutes for our whole session. So we want to get as much interactive participation among the panelists as possible, as well as participation with the audience. So with that, thank you so much. I will now hand over to the first panelist, Mr. Manohar Katani, to give his opening remarks first. Manu, over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Benkit. Can you all hear me? Okay, good. Well, first of all, thanks to CII for organizing this very interesting conference. And thanks for having me on the panel. Let me explain a little bit about the company that I represent, Capital Land. Capital Land is a quintessential Singapore multinational corporation. We are one of the biggest integrated real estate companies in the world. We have got an assets under management of about just over 100 billion US dollars. And we are present in over 30 countries. Our real estate offering covers the whole range of activities from residential to retail to business and industrial parks, service residences, and so on. So we cover the full spectrum. And we are both a developer as well as a fund manager. So we have many listed REITs. We are the biggest sponsor of listed real estate investment trusts out of Singapore. And interestingly, we also have a listed trust for our India businesses. So participants may know that India has come out with the REIT guidelines, and you have had your first few listed REITs in India. But we already had a business trust for our Indian properties listed here in Singapore since 2007. So that's Capital Land as a group. Now we have been in India for more than 25 years. We started our foray into India in 1994, actually under the auspices of a G2G kind of understanding. Menkit talked about Singapore being early believers in India, and really that was one of the manifestations of that. Singapore and India wanted to cooperate in developing industrial slash business park. So when my predecessors went to India, they concluded that it was best to develop a business park, which later started, the trend of IT parks coming up. And we partnered the Tata Group, and we actually developed the first IT park in India in Bangalore, in the Whitefield area, which was really a totally underdeveloped area at that time. So my predecessors will have a lot of stories to tell about that. So that actually started the whole trend of IT parks. That was before Bangalore became, such an interesting location for IT and IT-enabled services. I think we had our fair share of challenges, and when I talk to my predecessors, they also tell me, that there were times where, we wanted to walk out, but thankfully we stayed on. And I think all in all, it has been a very interesting and productive journey. So in the course of the last 25 years, we have expanded in India beyond Bangalore to also Chennai, Hyderabad, Pune, Gurgaon, Mumbai for our IT parks. And today we have got about, all in all, about, let me get this figure correct, it's about 18 million square feet of space in India for our IT parks, as well as our logistics assets. So that's the other area that we have gone in. That was more recent, about 4 or 5 years ago. We started developing logistics assets. And the third area that we are looking at actually is data centers. So these are the three segments that we are focusing on in India: IT parks, logistics slash industrial parks, and the third area is data centers. Our assets under management in India amount to about 3.4 billion Singapore dollars, which would be just about maybe about 2.8 billion US dollars. And we have announced publicly that we hope to double our presence in India, double the value of our assets in India over the next 4 or 5 years. Obviously, COVID has impacted our business as everywhere in the world. But I think my firm belief is that while it may delay some of the projects that we are looking at, it is not going to substantially change our outlook as well as our commitment to India. So we continue to look for opportunities. We are firm believers in India. We recognize the strengths of India in the segments that we have identified. And obviously, we only want to participate in areas where we have a comparative advantage, where we can make a difference. And we do think that the areas that we have identified, the locations that we have identified, is those where we have a comparative advantage. We also create good employment in the locations that we go into. There are more than 170,000 people working in the parks and the other developments that we have. And I'll be glad to share more as we continue in the discussion. But I'll just pause for now and let my other colleagues introduce themselves as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manu. We go next to Francis.
Okay, thanks, Minkit, and thanks for leading off. Uh, Good afternoon, everyone, including those who have joined us, whom I cannot see. You are most welcome, and I understand that you could be coming from all over the world, indeed. So, congratulations to CII for organizing this partnership summit on the event of its 125th anniversary. It's quite an achievement to have been around so long, and more importantly, to continue to contribute. CII is the most important partner for Singapore. And I speak as in my personal capacity, but as you heard Minkit introduce me, I am actually serving in the Ministry of Trade and Industry capacities. One is the Senior Director for Emerging Markets Division, uh, looking after Singapore's bilateral economic relationship with India. Also specifically a team called the Singapore-India Partnership Office, whose mission is to look for mutually beneficial partnerships with Indian states, Indian government entities, and also, of course, private sector partners. So, very happy to be here because CII has been my teacher since I started my journey 10 years ago in terms of working with India. So, in fact, I'm very pleased that we are taking our partnership even further. And CII and Singapore has with CII Institute of Logistics recently signed an MOU for Logistics Academy, and is to look at emerging technologies and industry best practices in logistics through a joint certification program in that is going to be delivered as a virtual skills training. And this was the first course. It's called Digital Supply Chain Transformation, starting in February. Okay, this is in a way a kind of advertisement, also a way to lead into how the first point in this topic, which is collaboration. So besides CII and SPF, we have many B2B collaboration. So some of it, Minkit has already mentioned in terms of both big and small companies. And I think Manohar has also introduced Capital Land a lot in India. So I want to focus a little bit on the G2G collaboration. And I'm happy to go into this in more detail in the Q&A. Our G2G collaboration, government to government collaboration, spans everything from the government of India, the union government agencies, to Indian states, as well as very specifically and very recently, very close collaboration with the Indian Commission in Singapore. We've always worked closely with the Indian High Commission, but most recently, especially with COVID, our good relationship and deep and close ties were brought home and brought usefully in ensuring that our supply chain in food, in medical supplies, and also to preserve air connectivity so that Indian citizens and Singapore citizens could either go home or continue to travel back and forth to a limited degree possible during this time. So I hope that at the end of this session, I also help, or all of us as panelists will help to convince you, the audience, that some of the being very difficult to do business in or to collaborate is a bit overstated because as Manohar has introduced, it is possible to grow very big in India, and it takes patience, it takes perseverance, it takes a lot of skills, and he's an epitome of that. And the other companies that have succeeded in India, I think, are trailblazers in their own right. What might be some other areas of collaboration? Just briefly touch on it. In fact, it's a very long list, and I have urban solutions, logistics I mentioned, agri-tech. I think Vijay will be speaking about that. Startups, Enterprise Singapore has a collaboration or has presence in India through the Global Innovation Alliance, and it augments Enterprise Singapore's overseas center in Delhi, in Mumbai, and Chennai. And that presence, 3 offices in one country, tells you how much opportunity there are in India. We have collaboration in pharma, in fintech between our financial regulators, in energy, in skills as well. And this attracts both the large companies as well as the SME companies. So in collaboration, I just want to make two more points. The principles underlying collaboration, I think in my 10 years working on projects, partnership projects in India, some more successful than others. I think the principles that I see is essential are, it has to be mutual benefit. With mutual benefit, then comes the possibility of alignment, and alignment of purpose and intent is a prerequisite for successful partnership. And we also need to dedicate adequate resources. I don't think there's any overseas market that is going to be easy. And certainly none in which we can be successful, whether or even as government, without dedicating adequate resources. And I already mentioned the presence of Enterprise Singapore colleagues, offices in India. I have my colleagues in the partnership office dedicated full time working on partnership opportunities. So beyond fund, which is what we tend to think of when we speak of resources, in fact, very often it is the people that we put on the project that is important. Right? Put the right people in on both sides, and actually things begin to move. And finally, we need to give it time and have the patience and perseverance to navigate all the inevitable bumps and twists and turns along the way. Let me move on to the next point in the theme, which is transformation. And if you're joining us from somewhere else in the world, besides India and Singapore, it may surprise you to know how much Singapore is regarded as a potential catalyst in terms of our involvement in India. And we can introduce technology, introduce best practices in both governance as well as in certain sectors. For example, we have a collaboration with the government of India in the area of aquaculture. And most recently, in the last year, the big project was that I was personally involved in was the Amaravati Capital City project in Andhra Pradesh. And there, the previous government of Andhra Pradesh actually saw Singapore's involvement as critical to bring about a catalytic change in the future of the state. Beyond Singapore as a catalyst in India, I think India also transforms when we are involved in India. So we can be transformed institutionally. For example, the creation of specific entities like the Singapore India Partnership Office to work on projects with India. I think companies you hear from others on the panel have also been transformed by India, both by the scale that it allows companies to grow because of the size of the market, capabilities that develop which might be relevant for extending or expanding to the rest of the world. And finally, transformation, I think those who are involved in India are transformed at a personal level. So Menkit introduced this book, India on Our Minds, and one of the co-editors of the book, Professor Tommy Koh, said it very well. He said, there are 50 essays in there, and there are 50 love letters from Singaporeans who have been transformed by their involvement, their relationship with India. So it's not a plug for the book, but if you have some time, I encourage you to take a look at it and see how our involvement with India personally transformed each of us. And the last point on the theme, very quickly, is growth. Because we look forward to the future, and actually all the more essential after the disruption and the economic shock and social shock of COVID-19, is that we look to emerge stronger from it, and especially for the bilateral relationship. And I believe that Singapore and India will have to develop our relationship much more strongly after COVID has been brought under control. Specifically for Singapore companies, I think earlier there was Make in India as an initiative, and then more recently the Atman Nirbhar Bharat program creates opportunities for companies to use India as a manufacturing base. For Indian companies, and this will be my final point before I get back to the chairman. For Indian companies, even though I'm speaking in my personal capacity, as a senior officer in the Ministry of Trade and Industry, I say we were very disappointed that India chose at this point not to be part of the RCEP, Regional Coastal Economic Partnership, which was recently signed between 15 countries. We are happy that the door has been left open for India to be joined at the time of its choosing. But for Indian companies looking to expand post-COVID, I think Singapore is a good base for Indian companies to come and to wish to expand into RCEP. Because even though India is indeed a huge market, enormous, but India is not bigger than India plus the rest of the world. So with this viewpoint, I would like to return the floor to Chairman or moderator, and then I'll be happy to take questions later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Francis, for giving that sort of very broad overview of our relations under the key themes of our session today. May I move on to Vijay for your remarks, please? Vijay? Vijay, you're muted.
Sorry. Good
Okay.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
AgriCorp is the company that I represent, which is an integrated agri player. We are present in 20 different countries, mainly handling the whole gamut of agri. We are in the grain business, we are in seeds, we are in the protein business. And in India, my engagement has been from the first landmark visit that the then Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong did to India. I was part of the Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and consequent to the visit, we floated a investment company called Parameshwara Holdings, which invested in the Bangalore IT Park that Manohar referred to earlier, as well as Gateway Distillery Park, which were the initial signature Singapore investments in India. Since then, it has been quite a journey, and I think Singapore-India relations have never been closer. Let me speak about cooperation between Singapore and India in the field of food and agri. And India is generally a traditional exporter to Singapore of most of the cereals, the edible nuts, the milk, aquaculture, and others. And we've got to remember that during COVID, traditional rice exporters such as Thailand and Vietnam actually put brakes on exports. And India was one of the few origins which kept the supply chain open. And this enabled countries in our region like Malaysia and Singapore to actually stock up. So this was something which as Francis referred to earlier, supply chains are changing, and one has to look at resilient supply chains. I think there is an opportunity in India for developing solutions which are specific to Singapore's taste and in keeping in mind Singapore's food security interests. India could be a potential offshore farmland for Singapore through long-term contracts. Incidentally, UAE just announced something on similar lines about 2 days ago. During COVID, Singapore also announced an ambitious 30-30 vision, which was to produce 30% of their food domestically by 2030. Currently, Singapore produces about 10% of their food domestically. And this was something which will require harnessing of high-tech in farming and modern aquaculture. Over the year, this has resulted in a number of high-tech investments. We ourselves have invested in an hydroponic facility in Singapore. We have made a small investment in southern India as well, and we are looking to harness some of the synergies between India and Singapore in that regard. Singapore during this period also announced a new Singapore Institute of Food and Biotechnology Innovation. This was to support the 30-30 initiative and boost Singapore's local production capabilities. Using food and ingredient options, alternate proteins, and novel nutrient-enriched delicacies aimed at recognizing Singapore as Asia's premier food hub. They will be using cutting biotechnology and clinical nutrition facilities, coupled with process engineering and new food safety methodologies. India, with its large hinterland and agriculture, could provide the ideal collaboration ground for Singapore companies wanting to export technologies to the world. We can develop in Singapore and tap India to procure raw material and produce. One of the areas that we are involved in is also very important in today's world and has done very well during COVID times. Incidentally, a point that we've got to recognize is during COVID times, agriculture was one of the strong growth points within India itself. So Singapore has emerged as a leader in Asia in plant-based proteins. Plant-based proteins normally use pulses as a raw material. India is one of the largest producers globally of pulses, and pulses are the key ingredients in alternate proteins. Pulses are environmentally friendly crops grown under tough conditions, consume far less water than normal crops, and are soil enrichers, giving nitrogen to the soil. So they generally tend to have a very low carbon footprint. They also consume 20 to 30 times less water than traditional animal-based proteins. This is something which will be a real winner in a country like India, which has got its fair share of water problems. Consumers globally are also seeking healthier food alternatives. Rising obesity rates across the globe, coupled with consumer interest in healthier food alternatives, are also driving demand for meatless proteins, and India can leverage on it. Just 10 days ago, the Singapore Food Agency, in a first of its kind globally, approved Eat Just's cell-based chicken, making Singapore the first in the world to give the go-ahead for lab-based protein. Temasek has also been very early in the curve, fostering this business by investing in startups to develop meat and fish substitutes, as well as plant-based milk. As I mentioned earlier, Agrocop has got a small protein manufacturing facility in Canada, and we are looking to put up one in Asia somewhere. There are a few other opportunities that I think Singapore and India can work together. Singapore has a strong biotech research base, which can partner and collaborate with Indian partners on gene editing. Currently, gene editing is not allowed in India, but I think it is going to be the way of the future. Singapore can offer energy management solutions and technologies to enhance storability and shelf life for perishable commodities. We've got to bear in mind that in India, for example, 25 to 30% of the food gets lost in the supply chain between harvest and the table. Singapore can also assist India in smart warehousing and logistics solutions and cold chain for large-scale agri-products. In the fintech area, we can also help produce microloans for crop financing and insurance. Finally, we ourselves have been involved in blockchain solution for our industry. We did our first cross-border transaction on blockchain about 2 to 3 months ago. I think blockchain is ideal for providing traceability in the food chain, a huge source of concern for today's millennials. And this can also reduce wastage, another source of concern, because if we are to feed the world in the next 20 or 30 years, that is going to be a priority area for us. I think we can discuss more in the question and answer, but this is something that I want to leave on the table for further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay. I think lots of very rich ideas for collaboration that we can discuss further. Well, Lawrence, the last panelist, and not certainly the least. Over to you, Lawrence.
Thank you very much, Minkit. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to thank CII today for organizing this seminar and for me to be able to speak on this panel. In my remarks, I'd like to say that I'm honored to be invited here today as a representative of the manufacturing community in Singapore. Today, my remarks will largely be concerning the adoption of technologies in the fourth industrial revolution commonly known as the I 4.0 for short, and how micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, MSME, can embrace and utilize technological platforms to improve the productivity of their businesses. Against this backdrop, let us explore further how the Singapore manufacturing industry can collaborate with India to improve our collective capabilities. Only as recently the third quarter of 2019, the adoption and implementation of Industry 4.0 by companies were generally slower than ideal. Things have not been moving as fast as we want, with a largely apathetic attitude towards such an adoption. Many of our members, many of the manufacturing fraternity was always asking, why should we adopt Industry 4.0? Why should we digitalize? However, due to the stringent measures imposed globally by the various governments in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, companies worldwide, big and small, had no choice but to rapidly change the way they did business. In fact, it's noteworthy that within Singapore as an economy, the adoption of digitalization went up 3 times during the COVID-19 period. Driven by necessity, globally, we see companies adopting and adapting to use digital technology very, very quickly. With such a driver, the time to embrace Industry 4.0 is certainly now, and in more areas in business operations. The importance of Industry 4.0 cannot be understated. In simple terms, in this industrialization uses technology such as AI, artificial intelligence, IoTs, industrial Internet of Things, sensors, in order to obtain data, and software to help break down the data for analysis or even operational. In this suite, digital technology can be said to be superimposed on the traditional mechanical automation processes of manufacturing. And in the traditional processes, usually they are often very reliant on a skilled worker of some sort. Industry 4.0 technologies aims to increase the manufacturing sector's efficiency and productivity. This allows for remote control and assessment of work processes, as well as for the customization of manufactured products for target markets. This allows companies to now have the ability to do away with the need to reserve or stock a higher number of inventory of raw materials. As you can imagine, if that is possible, then even the cash flow of that organization, that factory, would be greatly enhanced. For example, when countries begin closing borders in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, many companies were left with either too much raw material, such that the cost of storing these became an issue, or too little, not insufficient raw materials, such that production could not continue. Had companies earlier adopted AI or IoT technologies, they would probably have been better poised to plan ahead and therefore adjust their inventory and production accordingly. Another aspect of this era of I4.0 technology is the rising popularity of additive manufacturing, but widely known as 3D printing. With the rapid advancements of 3D printing technology in various kind of product sectors in recent years, production costs and time to market can be reduced significantly. For example, during his visit to Singapore NTU, Nanyang Technological University, in 2018, His Excellency, the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi, expressed interest in a 3D printed modular toilet as a viable alternative to India's public sanitation needs. This toilet only took about 5 to 6 hours to print. An entire toilet was actually printed. Now, about bringing MSMEs into the technology platform. It may seem daunting for micro or small, medium-sized enterprises to adopt technology, from the cost and processes perspective, the implementation of advanced technologies has always been very, very difficult. However, this pandemic has shown that without the adoption of these technologies, the alternative of the consequence of not adopting such technologies may be even more difficult to swallow or even survive. I recall when the Singapore government announced the decision to implement the circuit breaker on 3rd of April this year, 2020. Many Singaporean companies literally scramble to adopt technological means so that they can somehow continue to operate and even survive. And many actually did not. The scramble for laptops, for example, notebooks, laptops, productivity devices, and computers at the rate at which even the webcams were sold out in most of Singapore. Perhaps the simplest manifestation of the need to upgrade in technological levels. Just like many MSMEs around the world, technologies such as cloud computing services or virtual meeting platforms were viewed with skepticism as to whether they actually necessary by businesses owners in Singapore until they were forced to adopt them. Yet, let it not be mistaken that one size can actually fit all in this Industry 4.0. That is not the case. Countries should have an Industry 4.0 framework of its own, taking into account the unique factors from country to country. Part of the beauty of Industry 4.0 is therefore in its customization. For example, in a dialogue session with our members, a point was raised that some Singaporean companies are not able to fully utilize Industry 4.0 tools like their counterparts in Germany nor in China, because Singapore simply does not have as large a domestic consumption market as others. I do not actually agree with this point. Singapore Industry 4.0 framework can be tailored for companies of all sizes to produce niche products using data collected and analyzed from AI or IoT sensors. I was glad to hear that a United Nations Industrial Development Organization representative also shared the same view, as it was remarked during an interview that India should have an Indian version perspective of its I 4.0 framework that is specifically designed for India market. Another way for MSMEs to on board the Industry 4.0 technological platform without too abrupt is an introduction to manufacturing. With cloud manufacturing, companies operate in smart factories where they can pool their resources and services to manufacture products. This is akin to a framework that the SMF is currently setting up, Manufacturing as a Service, or MaaS for short. MaaS was envisioned to be similar to the model of Airbnb, where manufacturers who have access resources, would it be inventory, workspace, or machinery, may be availed to other manufacturers who have needs of these resources in return for a fee. For example, a factory with spare production capacity can offer this to another SME who may not need or have the resources to set up its own factory. Let me come to the India-Singapore partnership in Industry 4.0. What I have said above can be seen from an individual country's perspective to an individual business perspective. However, individualism in today's socio-economic climate will render one inadequate. Collaboration must still be the key success driver. No one can try to go at it alone, is the point. In this regard, Singapore and India have long since enjoyed good diplomatic ties with one another since historical times and even after 1965, when Singapore gained independence. India was amongst the first countries in the world to establish such ties with Singapore. In 2015, our two countries commemorated the 50th anniversary of the establishment of formal diplomatic relations. June 2019, Singapore Minister in charge of Trade Relations, Mr. S. Iswaran, visited India to reaffirm our ties and further strengthen our cooperation in areas such as trade and investment, air and logistical connectivity, and smart city development. This visit is just one example amongst the many that have taken place between representatives of the two countries. The signing of the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, CISA, in 2005, and the signing of on the India-Singapore Strategic Partnership in November 2015 also serves to illustrate the close ties shared between the two countries. Such ties are important to both nations in the face of current unpredictable global economy. In June 2019, the Confederation of Indian Industry, CII, signed a Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU, with the School of Continuing and Lifelong Education at the Singapore University of Singapore, NUS Scale, to develop talent in India for Industry 4.0. This MOU will see CII and NUS Scale collaborate to assess the proficiency of India's manufacturing sector and find specific areas that they can develop and promote NUS development programs to CII's members to help them build their own Industry 4.0 capabilities. Now, with this MOU, both Singapore and India aim to enhance their overall competitiveness in the manufacturing sector. In conclusion, I hope that my remarks has helped everyone to understand the importance of Industry 4.0 and how we, Singapore and India, can together embrace I 4.0 and work together to fully realize the benefits that it can produce. I look forward to speaking in the Q&A later. Thank you for your time and attention. Thank you. Thank you. I would now like to hand the time back to Chairman and to our moderator, Mr. Ho.
Thank you. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you so much for your remark. I will move. We have some questions from the audience that I will share later, but we thought maybe we can get into a couple of sort of Q&A amongst ourselves first, and this is also taking from, I like to maybe take the first question from an audience and use that to frame maybe our discussion. And the first question from the audience was that, and we said that Singapore has the highest investment in India, and Francis, in your remark, you said that the difficulty of doing business in India is actually overstated. That actually, if you put in the right resources, right framework, give it enough time, it works, and companies have grown big. So the questions I have, and this is from the audience, is from a Singapore investor's point of view, what are the sort of, can you recommend 5 improvements or intervention to help India attract even more investments into India, from Singapore into India? And in a way, this is, you can address it from your own personal point of view, maybe also to Manohar. What were the difficulties CapitaLand faced? And earlier you have gone back in India, began in India a long time ago. So some of the difficulties that you face, I'm sure, I think we must acknowledge that there has been structural reforms in India. For example, the ease of doing business in India has improved. Has it improved fast enough for you to put in new investments? Has it improved enough to attract new investments? What are the difficulties that you face, and what sort of improvement and interventions that you would like? Maybe I can ask Manohar to start, and then maybe Francis, certainly I'm sure you will have a view, and maybe the other panelists can weigh in on this issue about the doing business environment there. We are an investor, recognizing that there have been improvement, but can there be more improvement over the future, near future?
Thanks, Menkit, for that question. Very well articulated and put. So let me share the experience of our company and then my own personal observations. Okay, first I must say that for any company to venture out of its home country, it's always a big step. Okay, so I think we will never be satisfied and say that any country is perfect. So I think we have to take that as a given. Countries have their relative strengths and countries have their relative weaknesses. So when we went out to China, we had our own sets of challenges. When we have gone out to other countries, we have had our own sets of challenges. Now, I think specific to India, firstly, let me say why we went there, right? I mean, of course, we went there not just because of the good of our heart, right? We went there because there was a good reason. So very clearly, firstly, the mega trends which attracted a company like us to really take this step to go into India. Firstly, I think is urbanization. Okay, so if you look at India today, there are about 400 million odd people staying in urban environments. And over the next 30, 40 years, probably another 400 million people will move into urban environments, right? Now, what does it mean when a country urbanizes? First, of course, there will be a need to create many good jobs, right? Many good jobs. And secondly, also cities will need to develop. That would require buildings, which is our business, right? Which would require buildings, which would require infrastructure, and so on. Okay, so urbanization was one mega trend that pulled us there. Second is what I would call the youth dividend that India has. I mean, India has got the youngest growing population anywhere in the world, right? So it has got a huge demographic dividend, okay, of a large proportion of well-educated people entering the workforce. And relate this to the first point that I made, yeah? Urbanization together with what you call that, the demographic dividend. Now, third, 20 years ago or 25 years ago, we were talking about companies needing to do IT and having IT-enabled services. And India, because of the good quality of its manpower, the quantity of manpower, and the cost of IT-related manpower, it has got the best combination. Okay, that's why you see so many companies doing IT-related activities in India. And now, in addition to IT, and Lawrence spoke a lot about it, is this whole global mega trend of digitalization. Now, as companies move from just IT to really digitalization, which has obviously been accelerated by COVID and all the other things that Lawrence mentioned, would mean that there's an even stronger need to have a strong combination of quantity and quality of digitally trained manpower to address these issues. And here too, I think India is best positioned for it. Okay, so those are I think the pull factors of India as far as our business is concerned. And I think this is also applicable for many other businesses. Now, as far as challenges are concerned, of course, India is a big country, right? So we would definitely like things to move faster. We come from Singapore, we are so small, so things probably, even in Singapore, sometimes we feel things don't get done fast enough, okay? A business can never have things done fast enough, right? We want everything done yesterday. So in India, obviously, and of course, it's a huge country, you know, every state has its state-specific issues. So of course, if things can be done faster, so much the better. But I must say, in the last few years, there have been tremendous changes, right? I mean, the implementation of GST, I think, is a game changer, right? And if I think it makes a big, of course, there'll be a lot of people who complain about it. You can always see the glass as half empty if you choose to do so. But really, GST is a game changer because you can move goods from state to state without all the bureaucracy involved. And that means you can have optimal regional distribution centers. In the past, you couldn't have regional distribution centers because you needed to have one in each state. So there's no economy of scale. Therefore, it was not possible. And once that happens, that provides a tremendous advantage to start making manufacturing also more efficient. We have also seen in recent years we always used to joke, that if in China, roads are built overnight, in India, you need roads to be built over decades. But that has also changed, I must say, in the last 5 to 8 years. The pace of change at which infrastructure is being developed is much, much faster, right? So I would say the factors which, if I was to name 3 factors, I won't go into 5 factors, which actually helped us, was firstly having a commitment. And I think, Francis made that point very clearly. You cannot go there as half pregnant. You need to be totally committed, right? You cannot say, I just dip my toe, because then you will fail, right? You got to make full commitment, right? Commitment cannot be half, right? Because it will require patience, like all overseas market. India is no different. So it will require patience. And we have also learned with time, because we know that certain things will take longer. Although we try and do our best with the support of our institutes in India, like EDB, ESG, the High Commission here, very, very helpful. That we try and push things where we think it's really win-win outcomes. But even then, we built in contingency into our projects, right? We have to build in delays into our projects. So if we assume that it's going to take 12 months, we have to build in contingency. So we have learned that, right? So obviously, then you expect higher returns, right, to compensate for the delays. So we are selective in the kind of projects that we choose to do. Second, I think working with good partners in India, we have joint ventures with 3 state agencies in Karnataka, in Bangalore, in Pune with the Maharashtrian government, in Chennai with the Tamil Nadu government. And I think overall they have been very good experiences. They have helped us, where they can, to overcome certain hurdles. So it has been a good outcome. And third, of course, it's the people, right? Ultimately, again, if you don't put your best people, then you will not have the best returns. And I think it took us time, because especially at the start, where you need to have your own people go to India until you develop the local talent. It was challenging for us because not many Singaporeans want to go to India, right? Okay. But we were fortunate that some took on the challenge, and we were able to build up a strong team of our Indian colleagues there, who then understood what was required of us, as a Singapore company, and also helped us understand what is required to succeed in India, right? So it's a cross-pollination, right? And so today we are proud to say that, out of the, 270, 280 employees that we have in India, all are Indians, right? So we have localized the whole team, right? It didn't happen overnight, but it happened with commitment and so on. So really, as I said, my wish list, if I was to say, we just hope that things are done faster. But as I said, they are much better than before. And we continue to give productive feedback. For example, when it came to data center policies, we said that we are interested in going into data centers, and the building requirements are the same as for business parks. But for data centers, it does not make sense, because data centers do not have people, right? So why do you need so many car parks, for example, right? So we gave this feedback, and they have been taken in. In fact, they consulted us. The feedback has been taken in, and we are making progress. My only, as I said, it is never enough. My only thing would be if we could have got it done faster. But ultimately, it was done, right? So I think, but I must say, so if you want to go into India, the most important thing first you got to decide is that you have to be committed to it, and you must be willing to put in resources. If it is half-hearted, then failure is pre-programmed, right? But I would say this is not unique for India. This is any big country that you want to go in with a major commitment. If you just want to sell something, I think it's very different, right? But if you really want to go in and sink in serious money, then you really got to have a plan, have the commitment, and put the right resources into it.
Okay.
So I'll pause here.
Yeah. Francis, any quick rejoinder in terms of
rejoinder? No,
not rejoinder, but additional points because you have a good vantage view of overall Singapore's sort of business investments in India.
Right. I think what can a bureaucrat say, right? I'm still a bureaucrat, and I think Manohar has said it very well from the business point of view, and also Lawrence has shared some perspectives as well, and Vijay, of course, is an investor in India. So, but need to add, or to just make a few points, low or not overstating the risk does not mean that there's no risk. I think Manohar covered that very well. There's due diligence involved. There's determination and perseverance. This is on the part of Singapore investor. But your question, Minkit, was what can India do to make itself more attractive? At least from my perspective. First of all, I want to say that I don't think India or Indians don't know what needs to be done. So I don't want to come across as freely dispensing advice. So in fact, some of the things I'm going to say was shared with me, taught to me by Indian colleagues as well. So the problem is the gap between knowing and doing, and the doing is very difficult. So we might say, for example, it's often said India should have more continuity in policies. But in fact, as Manohar has said, in the last 5-8 years, in fact, some of the policies have been diligently pursued and implemented successfully. So it is possible, but it is difficult. And this is something which India has been working on, making good progress. And I think sometimes in some cases with Singapore entities' involvement, both as advice or as partners, I think that should continue, and it will help to attract more investors. The second point was you mentioned was implementation, because it's a very big country, and a good policy can be announced and generally implemented quite well, but the point is that it ought to be implemented consistently across the board. Otherwise, someone's going to have a bad experience somewhere, and this then brings me to my third and fourth point, which has to do with the mindset of India. I think today there are two Indias. One, which represented by many companies in India, is to be outward looking for opportunities in market, looking for partners and suppliers and all that. And then there's a very important and large segment in India that is rightly concerned about the disruption that comes from opening up. I think, as I said, even though India is a very large market and will be attractive to companies that want to invest to produce and sell, source and sell into the Indian market, it is not bigger. The Indian market is not bigger than India plus the rest of the world. So for India to be more attractive to investors, I think it needs to make a decision as to how to help those that are going to be disrupted by opening up, to be able to manage and to be able to also benefit from that opening up. And this is in two areas. It's not just the manufacturing. I think Lawrence gave a very good overview of the I 4.0. But actually, it's also in data. Manohar has talked about something about the data centers, but also Lawrence talked about cloud. And for all this to work, India also needs a much more confident policy about allowing data flow across its borders. And I think tomorrow, Minister Iswaran is going to touch on this topic in his fireside chat. The final point, since you asked for 5, I think after all is said and done, the most important thing that Indian government entities and Indian courts and Indian states could do in order to make India much more attractive to investors is to resolve all existing problems, some of which have gone on for many years. There's nothing like, resolving it expeditiously. Finally, to gain ally in the narrative to promote India, an investor, and happy investor in India is going to go around and be the best example of why others should also invest in India. So, thank you.
Menkit, if I may just add one more thing. I think there's this agency that was set up called Invest India, and I must really say that they are doing a good job. They are very pro-investors, and they really, go all out to try and address the issues. Of course, it's not possible to address all issues, but they are really very helpful and very pro-business. So my note to anyone who wants to invest, please take advantage of that.
Yeah, I want to move on to Vijay and ask you, and this is taking some of the questions that has come out, really talking about, say, investments in India in terms of the point that you made that there is a great amount of wastage, and India needs cold chain technology, and that we can do that. You mentioned about fintech. How Vijay, because you have sketched out, I think, many possibilities and areas to invest. How do we practically make this happen in Singapore? Because it sounded to me so viable and so practical, and obviously there is a need, but are there companies, and how do we as Singapore investors and the Singapore business community help organize this better in order to really look at that opportunity in India? And any comments? How can even, like, for example, SBF play a greater role in organizing the business community to tap this particular sector? If you're talking about the industry sector, we know, because we've done that before. We've done that from Bangalore days. But this is an area not so well trodden by many Singapore companies. How do we organize ourselves better in the agri-tech area to help India and help invest in India?
I think, basically, as Manohar mentioned earlier, it's important to get some good partners, good leaders, handholders who can initiate you into the market. And he also mentioned the connects that Invest India and CII and organizations like that can give. Of course, the initial cooperation will have to be local. Even people like Ascenda started, as Manohar mentioned, in Bangalore, and then spread their wings. So one has to sort of learn the terrain. The terrain requires patience and persistence, as Francis mentioned. In India, like most things, things never happen when you expect them to happen, but happen when you least expect them to. So you're in for the long haul. And for example, most of us would have read about the protests and the vigorous debate that's happening on the Farm Bill as well. For people looking at it from our perspective, it seems to be one of the easiest things to agree to, because it seems that all the stakeholders will get investments, private sector investments in their areas, which will enlarge the pie for everybody. And once you have investment, the two of you and all the stakeholders are inextricably linked, because you will live and die together. So it's sort of it seems to be an easy thing for us to understand, but there is a vigorous debate going on, and I'm sure that at the end of the debate things will settle down, and we will have an even landscape for all of us to operate out of. And this is something which we are looking at, because agriculture over the years has been an highly regulated area. We've had, at different points in time, we had 40 to 50 regulations governing every little investment that you do. And a lot of that has been unshackled over the years. And hopefully with when the dust settles down on this one, you will find that the terrain is easier. As far as microloans and everything like that, that's still a regulated sphere, but regulators there have been far more positive. So I think there again, you will see more and more engagement. So I think as far as agriculture, agtech, and everything allied to that is concerned, I think this particular time is really the time that we have all to look out for. And I think there will be lots of opportunities in the days and years to come.
Thank you, Vijay. May I move on to Lawrence, and there are questions from the participants regarding specific areas of collaboration to help Indian MSMEs as well as their employees to reskill and to transform digitally, and looking at opportunities for collaboration in automation. I think you covered this in your remark generally, but could you maybe be a little bit more specific? Is there one or two initiatives that maybe the manufacturing sector can do under the leadership and collaboration of MSF, SMF, that we can do together in partnership with maybe CII, that we can actually help in a big way to help SMEs in India adopt and adapt Industry 4.0, and at the same time make a business out of it. Is there any specific ideas that you will have?
Yes, please allow me to answer that question. But just a little bit before I go there, similar to the in the same vein as what my fellow panelist has answered just now, in the manufacturing sector, when it comes to specifically manufacturing, investors who will want to put a factory in India will be looking at one very specific area, which is the ecosystem of manufacturing. Simply put, specifically, no one would put a factory in India if they have to import all their parts. And parts, components, inventory will be a very important part of any manufacturing factory. The ecosystem has to exist. Plus, most of the parts, well, some of the parts can be imported. Some key components could be imported, but the larger ecosystem of manufacturing has to exist before any investor would want to put a factory in India. That is one of the concerns. The second thing would actually be the skill set of the labor force. The investor must be confident that specific technical skill set, especially in the area of precision engineering, in the area of CNC and molding, stamping, has to exist in India. It is a extremely important concern of any investor who wants to put a factory in India. Now, in the area of specific collaboration, SMF has looked into this particular question, and I think that in the area of food and beverage, F&B production, medical devices, these are areas which we can collaborate with India side. Renewable energy, and specifically an important issue of water recycling. Water is an important issue in India, and I believe that the Indian government is also actively targeting this issue. Coincidentally, at this point, I would like to say that I was privileged to be based out of Delhi from the year that was between 2008 to 2009. I lived for an entire year in Delhi, and I can confidently say that water was one of the major concerns among the expatriate communities at that time. Sustainable and environmental friendly products is also an area which we are able to collaborate in. SMF would be happy to start conversations with CII on all these collaboration possibilities. And also specifically in terms of things that we can do, start off immediately. One of the suggestions that we can go ahead right now is to conduct webinars and seminars, networking platforms, business matching, technology matching among our members. I can also suggest that working together with SMF, which can be seen as a multiplier, then these are the areas in which we can do a lot of these B2B matchings together with our Indian counterpart. The sharing of information and collaboration between relevant agencies and TACs like us will be important.
Thank you, Lawrence. Can I follow up with one? Yes.
First, I'd like to do something. Maybe to about, just to let the audience know, in fact, India today, the Ministry of MSME has 18 technology centers across India and intend to not only to set up more, but also to upgrade them to be able to deal with Industry 4.0. So this is intended to help Indian MSMEs to upgrade their skills, and perhaps these could be opportunities for members of SMF to also look for partners in that to start with manufacturing. So just wanted to add that point.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Francis. Of course.
Yeah. And I think also some of our ITE services, our ITV, has also gone in to look at vocational training and education as well. So I think these are also important investments that we do in order to improve the capacity and the competitiveness of the ecosystem for manufacturing. But maybe, Lawrence, I ask you maybe a quick question, and perhaps I don't want to put you too much on the spot. There is a commentary that asking whether India has missed this manufacturing that's moving out of China, in that sense that I know for sure within the federation we see Bangladesh benefiting from a shift of manufacturing out of China. We've seen benefits accruing to Malaysia, certainly to Vietnam. We're not seeing it in Indonesia. We're not seeing it in India. Do you hold that view that India is a little bit too slow in order to capture this once in a lifetime opportunity of shifting of this huge manufacturing out of China, outside of China, to other places?
Thank you very much for that question, and it's a very important one. And you have not put me on the spot, because the short answer to the question is no. India has not missed the boat, not at all. In the year 20, to be frank with you, one of the largest contract manufacturers in the world is Foxconn, the Taiwanese company, and they have been exclusive for Apple products for many, many years. Foxconn has gone into India twice. They've gone into India, I believe, in the early 2000s, but they came out. I think they were trying to do contract manufacturing for Nokia. However, in the year 2015, they went back into India again. And this is a signal to be frank with you, it reverberated very, very loudly in the state of Shenzhen in China, which is actually the Silicon Valley as well as the manufacturing town of the whole of China. Apple wanted Foxconn to look at India in order to diversify out of Shenzhen. And it is a matter of fact. There are documents that actually Foxconn is starting to divest out of China. And India has been a target of that investment. Another area of another area of consideration for India is in the area of additive manufacturing, 3D printing. Additive manufacturing has never really taken off in Shenzhen, in China. It has never done that. Unknown to most people, and this is not widely reported, 3D manufacturing is not prevalent in China simply because Shenzhen started off about 30 years ago as a manufacturing state. And at that time, there was no real 3D printing. Most of the factory, in fact, all of the current factories in China are still very reliant on traditional molding, stamping, surface mount technology of their PCB boards in a very traditional sense. They are cheap. They are cheaper, yes, but new technologies, new trend in the area of 3D printing, which potentially speaking, you can actually print and sell, could maybe allow India to leapfrog China as the center of manufacturing on a global basis. So the answer would be no from me, based on my experience in this area. Yes.
Okay, good to hear that view and assessment from you. May I I ask one question, and this is to Manu, and I'm sure you have thought about it, or your clients have thought about this. We have you have many investments in the IT park, and now with COVID-19 and really a view of businesses being able to have most of their employees or a lot of their employees work from home. Surely it must impact at least some sense of where do we do the BPO, the IT outsourcing. Your clients in the IT park, how have they reacted to that particular trend? Are there new sort of innovation or transformation to make that business sustainable in IT park in view of this sort of disruption or new mode of working as a result of COVID-19, more work from home, etc.?
Thanks, Minkit. Before I answer the question that you just posed, I just want to add on to the comments on manufacturing in India that Lawrence made. We have, of course, industrial parks as well, and I can just confirm what Lawrence said, that lots of companies are looking at India, including many Taiwanese companies. So I think India has a unique opportunity to really capture quite a lot of this for the electronics value chain. And as I said, we have some examples.
Okay.
The point, of course, is you can always have more, right? And I think that's where if India again improves certain things, as I said, they have already made a lot of progress. There's a tremendous opportunity to capture a bigger part of the value chain, because for a variety of reasons, companies are looking at India. So I just wanted to add that point. So to come to your point on changes in the workspace arising from COVID, first I must say the situation is very fluid. I always like to say that we are at that interesting juncture where the opinions of fools and experts don't differ. Okay, so one day people will say one thing, and then next day you will hear a company saying something else. But one thing for sure, definitively, there will be more work from home. Okay, but we also recognize, and particularly in a place like India, the efficiency in the long term. I think working in the office still provides more efficiency for a variety of reasons. And even this year, I think the take-up of real estate space in India has been quite significant for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. COVID, digitalization was already a mega trend, but COVID has only accelerated this. But all companies need to have a base from which to implement these digitalizations, right? And as I said earlier, India has the best combination of quality, quantity, and cost of this talent. So I don't think India faces a huge. The second best alternative is very far away. Okay, so that's why we are still very positive. But having said that, companies are taking a pause, right? Because they need to recalibrate and review what their needs are. So we see a few things emerging. First, companies may start adopting a hub and spoke approach. So instead of having more people in one location, they may have more spokes, okay, so that travel time is less than before, okay, and also as a part of de-risking, so that not all people are in one location. Second, they may choose to have more core and flex, right? That instead of having everything under their own lease as core, they may want to have an option of having a smaller part as core and some part as flexible. And that could be co-working and so on. And again, those could be in different locations. Okay, so that's the other trend. And that's why some of the things that we are doing, so we have come up with solutions offering flexible workspace, co-working space, more of co-working space, and that also, leased out in a flexible manner. Okay? And the third thing is really, how do you design the parks? How do you design the customer experience so that they have as safe an experience as possible? So here again, I think we have been making a lot of adjustments to the park to manage this situation. But I think all in all, I am still of the view that the overall take-up of space, for the reasons that I mentioned, in India will continue to be strong. And I think that's what we are hearing from all the other players in this ecosystem, right?
Thank you, Manu.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to just interrupt you here and maybe to let everybody, all the panelists know and the participants know that actually we have run out of time, and we managed to actually fill this 1.5 hours. I have not even answered all the questions, but I thought, I think I should wrap up here because time is up by saying that really looking at our partnership into the future. I think we have identified so many possibilities and sectors, and that even in spite of COVID-19, it's not a dampener, it's added more to the list of the things that we can do together between Singapore and India. So I'm hugely optimistic that with going forward in the near future, we will be able to pick up pieces and move even to greater growth in many sectors. We identified agri-tech, manufacturing, real estate, infrastructure, manufacturing as a service, digitalization, fintech, logistics, real estate. I think there's a possibility of even aviation and tourism when we manage to get travel restrictions lifted. So I think the opportunities are indeed great. And I think together with SBF and CII, I think we remain strong partners working with our businesses, I think, to facilitate some of these exchanges and hopefully very fruitful ventures. So I want to end here, and I want to maybe thank the various panelists, Manohar, Francis, Lawrence, as well as Vijay, for giving your views and actually giving many ideas. I think some of our colleagues who are listening in, I think will follow up and take on some of these ideas so that we can actually structure specific and concrete proposals for our business community to collaborate together with each other. So thank you very much. And I wish all of you a good day. And I'm so happy that all of you have participated in this event. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.